It's a delight to be here this afternoon to talk to you about the origins of human personality. How did you become the unique person you are becoming? My answer is twofold. It is reflected in the title of my talk, In the Beginning and Once Upon a Time. You all know the story of Adam and Eve. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and God made a man, named him Adam. But Adam was lonely, so God made Adam a helpmate, whom we know as Eve. Why is Eve there? Well, not just for casual sex, which comes later in the story after they get in trouble, but originally Eve is there for companionship. It is not good that man should live alone, God announces. Put differently, human beings are relentlessly and exquisitely social. They need to be together. They have to live in groups. The primal couple in the Genesis story forms the nucleus of a human group. Let me translate that ancient story into the language of modern science. In the beginning, natural selection created human beings to be brainy, bipedal creatures who live together in complex social groups. Really, really smart compared to the other animals, and unfailingly social, just as the Genesis story suggests. We evolved to live together in complex social groups, cooperating with each other, competing, striving to get along and to get ahead, so that each of us may someday leave something behind for the next generation in order to keep the whole thing going. When it comes then to psychological origins, each of us enters the world as something of a social actor. And I mean this quite literally, as Shakespeare did when he wrote that all the world's a stage, and each of us an actor upon it. Go to the theater, watch a movie. What do the actors do? First and foremost, they perform emotion. They express feelings like joy, love, care, hatred, envy, fear, and sadness. We, the audience members, we see it in their faces and in their words and deeds. We see it and we recognize it as what we do in everyday social interactions. As social actors in real human groups, we perform emotion every day, and we work hard to control or regulate our emotional performances. And as a result, each of us develops something of a reputation in social groups regarding the kind of social actor we are. Melissa's reputation is that she is kind and caring, but a little bit impulsive. Mary is hard-driving and aggressive. Joe, he's neurotic. He seems to worry all the time. In the beginning of a human life, the infant takes the social stage in the first day or two out of the womb. Now, the infant doesn't know he's a social actor. The infant doesn't consciously know that he or she is anybody at all. But here's the key thing. Other people in the infant's world respond to the infant as if he or she were a social actor, as if he or she were Matt Damon or Jessica Chastain on the big screen at the local Cineplex. Parents, siblings, aunts, and uncles, they watch the baby as they might watch a movie, looking for the emotion, trying to figure out, what kind of a social actor will this little creature ultimately turn out to be. When they do this, what they see is what developmental psychologists call temperament. Temperament is the early emerging style of emotional performance and self-regulation that young human beings display. Temperament is strongly driven by genetic differences, for sure, but it is also shaped, research suggests, by experience, by how the audiences respond to the infant's performances of emotion over time, over many years, really, as early personality takes form. Now, temperament divides up into a few basic dimensions. Let me focus on one of them for a moment. The dimension of positive affectivity. From the beginning, some babies are just more positive, emotionally speaking, than other babies are. They laugh more, they smile more, beginning around age 1 or 2 months, compared to other babies. Babies endowed with positive affectivity seem to get more enjoyment out of social interaction compared to other infants, at least on average. Here's an example, somebody you all know and remember, this guy, George W. Bush, President of the United States, recall, between the years 2001 and 2009. Now, don't think of him as president here. Think of him as a social actor with a particular temperament that we can trace back to the beginning, to his earliest years, when he was known affectionately in his family as Georgie. His father, George Bush Sr., while he also became a president, described his 13-month-old Georgie this way in a letter to a friend. When I come home, he greets me and talks of Blue Street, sentences disjointed, of course, by enthusiasm and spirit boundless. From the beginning, all the family members described Georgie as especially spontaneous, gregarious, outgoing, and really funny. The other kids would say, "Good morning, Mrs. Weatherspoon," when their Sunday school teacher walked into the room. But Georgie would shout out, "Hi, little lady, looking sexy." Georgie could use little humorous bursts like that in other ways too. When he was 7, his little sister Robin, age 3, died of leukemia. The family tragedy put Barbara Bush, his mother, into a deep depression. Georgie saw that his mother was sad, and he knew what role he had to play as a social actor. He set up his first life goal at age 7. I'm going to cheer my mother up by doing goofy things and playing jokes every day. And that is pretty much what he did, every day, for months on end back then. Barbara Bush recalls it fondly in her late life memoirs. Well, what happens to these little social actors blessed with positive affectivity when they grow up to become big social actors? Almost anything can indeed happen when it comes to personality development, but there is research here and statistical tendencies to suggest that early emerging positive affectivity tends to pave the way, in some lives at least, for the emergence of extroversion in the adult years, the trait of extroversion. Indeed, friends and foes alike agree on one thing about George W. Bush's personality. He is a blazing extrovert. He describes himself that way in his autobiography when he writes, "I am restless, I am outgoing, I've always invaded other people's spaces, leaning into them, touching, hugging, getting close. I am perpetual motion." Historians rated all the U.S. presidents, going back to George Washington, on a set of personality descriptors. Scoring at the top of the list on extroversion were Presidents Teddy Roosevelt, Bill Clinton, and George W. Bush. As social actors, extroverted people often take bold action with the promise of obtaining positive emotion as a reward. They can be big risk takers on the public stage or in their private lives. In the beginning, and once upon a time. Once upon a time, a white girl from Kansas met a Kenyan exchange student. And they had a baby. The Kenyan was charismatic but irresponsible and something of a drunk, and he abandoned the mother and her firstborn son. And it came to pass that the young boy grew up and thrived in Hawaii and Indonesia, raised by his mother and maternal grandparents. Young Barry Obama played basketball, listened to Stevie Wonder on the radio, read great works of African American literature like Langston Hughes and Malcolm X. As a young man, he wrote a book about his childhood experiences and his adolescent experiences and his plans for the future, entitled Dreams from My Father. And as the title suggests, the main theme of the book is the author's relentless, tortured search to figure out what kind of a man his father really was, and thereby to know himself. The book also sets up a clear identification between the hero and the historical movement in the United States for racial equality, a grand narrative that runs from the 19th century emancipation of African American slaves to the 1960s civil rights movement. I am part of this narrative, the author writes. This is my story too. Well, beginning around age 20, Barack Obama struggled to create a meaningful story for his life. Unlike President Obama, most of us do not write a book about it. But nonetheless, we pretty much do the same thing, more or less. Research suggests that people living in modern societies often begin in their late teens and early 20s to create stories about who they were in the past, who they are today and who they may become in the future. Let us call these stories our narrative identities. Your narrative identity is the story that you are working on in your mind about how you came to be the person you are becoming. Your story has dramatic high points in it, low points, turning points. It probably has heroes and villains. It's your personal autobiographical reconstruction of the past as you remember it, and your anticipated future. Your personal story about your origins and your destiny. Now, two things to know about your life story. First, it is nothing more than a myth. Autobiographical memory is hopelessly selective and unrealistic. Perceptions of the future, who can predict the future? And if you were to be truthful here, you would have to admit that you cannot possibly know how you came to be the person you are becoming. You just make it up. But we all do this. Human beings seem to be naturally drawn to stories to make meaning in their lives. Second, this personal myth that you're walking around with, it is as much a part of your personality makeup as are your temperament traits. When it comes to personality development, we are actors and we are authors, both. The in the beginning, your traits, and the once upon a time, your stories. A growing body of research in psychological science attests to the power of stories in creating meaning in people's lives. For example, studies show that the most caring and productive adults in American society tend to construe their lives as narratives of redemption. These are stories in which suffering, personal suffering, ultimately leads the way towards the experience of positive outcomes and positive insights. Melissa suffered abuse from her stepfather for years until she got to college and broke away and decided to commit herself to helping others who had been victimized. Joe, he thinks he's a loser. He spends a lot of time at home, can't seem to do anything right, drinks a lot, doesn't go in much. Around age 25, with the help of some friends and a support group, he finds his calling in life, turns it all around, and never looks back. I'm talking here about life stories that go from sin to salvation, illness to recovery, poverty to abundance, waywardness to commitment. Among Americans, these kinds of stories often follow such classic cultural forms as the rags to riches stories of the American dream, or religiously themed narratives about personal conversion and moral uplift. Redemptive stories like these keep hope alive in the face of adversity. Well, as social actors, we find it really hard to change our basic traits. Therefore, we would do well to work on our stories instead. Research conducted by Professor Jonathan Adler at Wilmette College in Massachusetts follows psychotherapy patients over multiple sessions. Before each meeting with the therapist, the patient sat down with Adler and told a little story about what was going on in the therapy. The patients were also assessed on mental health symptoms and other psychological variables. And Adler, he coded those stories, he analyzed them, and he found that as the patients got better, as they improved in psychotherapy, the heroes in the stories they told tended to show higher and higher levels of what Adler called personal agency, which he defined as taking control of your life. More importantly, the increases in personal agency, as displayed in the stories, preceded and predicted the improvement in mental health. In other words, the stories changed first, and then the patients got better. You can change your life for the better by creating a better story for your life. In the beginning, then, your genes and your environments, they conspire. They work together to make you into a certain kind of social actor who performs emotion in a characteristic way. Your actor traits develop over the course of life, though generally outside your awareness. Still, in young adulthood, and sometimes after that, you get a second chance for a kind of personality do-over. As an author, you can now create a story for your life, a once-upon-a-time tale, and layer it over your dispositional traits. You have the chance to create a narrative about the remembered past and the imagined future that may enable you to live out your deepest dreams and most cherished goals. You have the chance to tell and to live a story in which the hero aims to leave something positive behind for the next generation. Be sure you do not miss out on your chance. Thank you.